Hello guys, and welcome back to my second part of this tutorial where we are going to make a multiplayer Battleship game as a client-server system. The first step is that we're going to do the logging in part. So if you remember from the previous video, this is what I imagine the login view will look like. I can insert the username and the password, and then I can click the login button. We will do the register in a separate video later on. So for now I just want to make sure that I can log in, and that today means a successful login is just that I can print out a message after that I have made a request to the server and validated the user in my dummy database, my in-memory account system. And if that user is validated, then I get a positive response back, and then I print out in the console from my login view that I have received a positive response, and I can then in a later video make it so that we proceed to the lobby view instead. If I get a negative response because I inserted something wrong here, then I want that printed out here so the user can see it. So for now we just use hard-coded user in the in-memory account class, and a successful login means that I am printing out a message. So basically I just want to make sure that I have the what we call a vertical cut in my system. So if you remember the class diagram from last time, I have cut out the parts that we're not going to do today, but that means we are going to need all these classes. So the login is a fairly simple functionality, but I still need a button in the GUI and then follow that all the way through the system down to where my dummy database is, my in-memory account manager, and then I need a response all the way back to the GUI so it can react to that. And that is what we're going to do, right? So I removed the other views, but I still need some functionality for the model and the client, and I still need my core part of the MVVM here. And on the server side, I didn't actually remove that much. It will just be a fairly slim piece of functionality down here. We don't have much functionality in it yet. And I only need the account for my data transfer. This is the object that will contain user information, and I'm going to send that back and forth in the system. All right. So to give an indication of how this is going to work, I have created a sequence diagram. It will look like this, and we're just going to spend a few minutes on walking through this and comparing it to the system. So you can see I start here with my login button, and I go all the way to the account home, and then all the way back again with my response, and then either if it's okay, then I can open the lobby, and if it's something else, then I can just display the error. So let's just compare this to the class diagram. We're going to go step by step just to really cut it out in cardboard. I don't know if that's an English expression, but to make it really clear what I expect to happen here. I often see this could be very beneficial for some of the semester project groups because they sort of get stuck somewhere in one of these steps. And if you have the overview of what you plan to do, then it's quite easy to follow these through the code and verify that, okay, maybe I broke my step here. This is where it failed. It's just silly mistakes where you forget to call a method, so you just have maybe the login method implemented in the model doesn't do what you expected to do, or you forgot to implement it. I see this way too often, so I really recommend that you draw your sequence diagram and then follow through, and that's what we're going to do with the programming part. So we're going to compare this with the class diagram over here. So we're just zooming in, and we're starting here. I have a login button in the view, and if I click that, I want a method to be called in my login controller, right? The login controller will call a method on the login view model. I have indicated here that the login controller sends the username and password, but I think we're going to do data binding between the two, the controller and the view model, so there will actually be no arguments here. That seems to be the common approach, but yeah. The login view model will send forth the username and password to the model, and the model will then send, well, it will wrap the username and the password into an account class, and then it will send that account class to the client so that the client can send it forth to the server. Here I'm sending an instance of my request, so the argument here, the object argument, will be my account class, and the type will be some enum of login, I think I call it. On the server side, the server socket handler is going to figure out what to do with this request type, and then based on that it will tell the model to validate the user or my account info, and the model is then going to access my data access layer down here and have this one see if it matches. Can I find the account that I'm looking for? And then we have reached the bottom of my system, and then we need to propagate the response all the way back up through the classes, which means all the way from down here up to here, and then at some point we'll react to that in the view. Now, often I see everything in a semester project, you send a response and then asynchronously you send a request back, and that is usually a good idea to avoid that my view sort of freezes while we're waiting for a response from the server. It can take some time if I first need to send a request to the server, and then the server also needs to interact with the database, and so the UI can seem sort of frozen until we get a response back. But I'm just logging in here, so I don't really want the user to do much else in the meantime, and it is a request response I have set up. So in this case, I don't need it to be asynchronously. It's a lot more important to do it asynchronously if one user wants to send something to another user. So we're going to do that later on when we are doing the lobby part, because then we need to have one user sent to another one, and each user must be listening for requests from the server. But in this case here, I initiated the request. I expect a response back, so I'm just going to do that in a synchronous approach. All right. In the view part here, if I return, I imagine that I'm going to send strings. So either I return OK if the login is OK, or I send some other string with a message for an error. And we're going to receive that string in the login view model. We're going to update a property, and the controller here will react to that update, and then either tell the view handler to swap views or print out the error message. And in my case, we're not swapping views, we're just printing out something in the console because I don't have the next view. But we'll work on that later on. So that's the plan to do the login and to have this vertical cut. And this is a very good starting point, because if I have this pathway all the way through the system, then all the following calls from view to database will look very similar, and you can sort of look at what you've previously done and reuse the idea of that to make method calls all the way to the database. So the login is usually a good starting point because it's so simple, but it still requires everything from top to bottom. All right, so that's the idea, and next step is to actually do it. So let's go do that. That will be in part 3. See you there.